It started with a storm, not the kind that rattles windows or floods streets, but one that brews silently in the hearts of people pushed one too many times. One that rolls in quietly, in the form of side eyes, dismissive tones, and fake smiles, stretched too tight. But on this particular morning, the sky was clear above Atlanta International Airport. The birds outside chirped like any other day, the sun spilled through the glass roof, and everything looked normal. At least on the surface. Danielle Price stood in line at Gate B14 with her boarding pass clutched in one hand and her bag slung over the other shoulder. A black woman in her mid-30s, she looked polished but tired. A single mom, a corporate consultant, and today a woman who'd just finished a 3-day negotiation marathon that would decide the future of a struggling tech company. She was used to boardrooms filled with men who underestimated her. She was used to silence after she spoke, that pause where people pretended to process her idea before echoing it louder in their own voice. But she wasn't used to having her seat stolen. Flight 682 was boarding, a long flight to San Francisco where she'd be presenting the final contract to the board of directors in the morning. She'd earned this first-class seat, not through favors or handouts, but through 14-hour days and sleepless nights with a toddler crying in the next room. That seat, 1A, was her peace, her one moment to rest. But as she stepped onto the plane and reached the front row, a man was already sitting there. He looked up, blinked slowly, and said, "Are you sure you've got the right seat?" Danielle held out her boarding pass. "Yes, 1A, that's me." The man didn't move. A flight attendant appeared behind her, smiling tightly. "Is there a problem here?" "Yes," Danielle said, trying to keep her voice steady. "He's in my seat." The flight attendant glanced at the man, then back at Danielle. "Ma'am, let's just have you take a seat in the back for now while we sort this out, okay?" Danielle blinked. "No, this is my seat, it's on my ticket." The man chuckled and leaned back casually. Maybe there was a mistake in the system. But there was no mistake. Danielle had paid full price for this first-class ticket. She had the confirmation, email, the app, the printed receipt. But none of that seemed to matter. The flight attendant's smile never dropped, but her tone hardened. "Ma'am, you're delaying boarding. We'll get this handled once everyone's seated." "Why can't he move?" The attendant's eyes flicked around nervously. Passengers were starting to stare. One man whispered to his wife. Another shook his head. Danielle didn't raise her voice. She simply stood her ground, hand still holding the boarding pass, her eyes locked on the flight attendant. But the woman leaned closer and whispered, "Either you take that seat in economy, or you won't be flying today." Danielle stepped back, stunned. Her cheeks burned. She could hear the beating of her heart in her ears. All she could manage was, "Wow." From the back of the line, a young voice spoke up, "I'll trade with her." Everyone turned. He was maybe 16, tall, thin, in worn sneakers and a hoodie with his school's name on it. His name was Malik, a black teenager, from the south side of Chicago, flying alone to visit his grandmother in California. He'd saved for this trip for almost a year, doing odd jobs in his neighborhood, and skipping every snack he wanted at school to stash away money. He hadn't even told his friends he was flying. He didn't want to jinx it. The flight attendant narrowed her eyes. "Excuse me?" I said, "I'll trade. I'm in 12C. She can have it." Danielle turned to look at him. "You don't have to do that," he shrugged. "It's just a seat, right?" But it wasn't, and they both knew it. Malik walked down the aisle with his small backpack and nodded at Danielle as she passed him. She moved slowly toward the back, toward 12C, toward the seat that should have never been hers. She sat down quietly, her hands shaking slightly, but her face calm. She didn't want to cry. Not here, not like this. The cabin lights dimmed as the plane taxied toward the runway. Next to Malik, in the aisle seat of 12B, a pregnant woman rubbed her belly and adjusted her seatbelt. She'd watched the whole thing, from the argument up front to the quiet courage of the teenager beside her. She didn't say anything at first. She just observed, Until the seatbelt sign clicked off and the cabin settled, she leaned toward him. "Thank you for what you did," she said softly. Malik smiled. "It wasn't a big deal." "It was," she replied. And then she reached into her purse, pulled out a folded note, and slipped it into his hand. "Open it when you land," she said. Malik looked confused, but he nodded. No one around them noticed. No camera recorded it. No one clapped or made a scene. But something had shifted, quietly, deeply, unshakably. Meanwhile, up front, Danielle stared, out the window, watching clouds drift by. She didn't know that back in row 12, a moment was unfolding that would change more than one life. That a teenager's small act of dignity was about to ripple into something much, much bigger. And neither of them, not Malik, not Danielle, not the pregnant woman, could have imagined what would happen next. Because when Malik opened that note, everything would change, and the man in 1A, the one who stole a seat that wasn't his, well, his day was about to get a lot worse. The hum of the airplane engine filled the silence around Malik. He sat quietly, the folded note burning a hole in his hand like it carried something more than just ink and paper. He looked at it once, then tucked it into the front pocket of his hoodie. He wasn't sure why he didn't open it right away. Maybe it was the way the woman looked at him when she handed it over, like it was something sacred, something personal. Whatever it was, he respected it. He wasn't in a rush. He glanced over at her. She was asleep now, head resting gently against the window, hand still on her stomach. There was something calm about her, a kind of quiet strength, like someone who had seen hard days but decided not to let them define her. He thought about his own mom for a second. Always tired, always hustling, working double shifts at the hospital, then still finding time to iron his clothes for school the next day. He smiled faintly. A few rows up, Danielle still sat stiffly, arms crossed and eyes locked on the clouds outside. But she wasn't really seeing them. Her mind was racing. She couldn't stop replaying what had just happened. The look on that flight attendant's face, the smirk on the man who had taken her seat, the complete dismissal of her voice. It wasn't about the seat anymore. It never really was. It was about how easily they made her feel small, invisible, replaceable. She'd fought so hard to be seen, to earn respect, to be taken seriously in rooms where no one looked like her, talked like her, or cared to listen when she spoke. And here she was again being told to step aside, just like that. Her phone buzzed in her lap. A message from her assistant popped up. "Good luck tomorrow, Ms. Price. Board is prepped." "They're expecting a strong pitch," she sighed and typed back quickly. "Thank you. Let me know if there's any last-minute updates." She turned the phone face down and closed her eyes for a second. She had to shake this off. She couldn't afford to carry the weight of today into tomorrow's meeting. This contract was worth $300 million. It could bring jobs to cities no one invested in anymore. It could open doors for people like her who always had to knock twice just to be heard once. But still, the way that man looked at her, like he was doing her a favor by taking what was rightfully hers. Back in row 12, Malik leaned his head back. He thought about the trip ahead. His grandma would be waiting at the gate, arms wide, face glowing. She hadn't seen him in 3 years. He used to spend summers with her when he was younger, but life had gotten hard. His mom couldn't afford to send him last year. This trip was his gift to both of them. He wanted to surprise her. He hadn't told her he was flying in. Just told her to be at the airport around 5 p.m. That was all. He reached down and touched the corner of the note again. He couldn't lie. He was curious. What kind of note could a stranger give that felt this serious? But just as he thought about opening it, a voice came through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be experiencing some light turbulence for the next 20 minutes. Please remain seated and keep your seatbelts fastened." The lights dimmed slightly. The woman next to him stirred but didn't wake. Malik looked around. Everyone was quiet. Some were reading, others scrolling on their phones. A few eyes kept glancing toward first class. Maybe they saw what happened too, maybe not. Either way, no one said anything. No one ever did. But one person had noticed. And she wasn't in a seat. She was standing at the back of the plane, by the galley, sipping a cup of coffee and watching everything unfold. Her name was Laura, a senior flight attendant, been flying for 20 years, seen all kinds of passengers, the kind who smiled at you like you were invisible, and the kind who made you feel human again. She'd watched the scene with Danielle at the front unfold. She'd seen the way her junior colleague brushed it off. She'd seen how the man in 1A pretended he belonged there, never once looking uncomfortable. And she'd seen Malik, the quiet courage of a teenage boy stepping in to do what grown adults should have done. She hadn't said anything at the time. Her hands were full and the boarding process was chaotic. But now she was thinking. She walked up to the front, quietly, calmly. She leaned over and whispered to the flight attendant who'd handled the situation earlier. "Did you switch Danielle Price's seat?" The younger woman looked flustered. "It was a mistake in the system." Laura raised an eyebrow. "Was it?" The woman didn't answer, just stared ahead. Laura looked toward 1A. The man was sipping wine, scrolling through emails on his tablet, like nothing had happened. Laura nodded slowly, then turned and made her way down the aisle. She stopped at row 12. She looked at Malik, then at Danielle a few rows up. She took out a small notepad and scribbled something. She handed it to Danielle without a word. Danielle unfolded it. "I saw what happened. I'm sorry. This isn't over." Danielle's eyes met Laura's, and something passed between them. An understanding, a silent promise. Meanwhile, the man in 1A shifted in his seat. He glanced around, suddenly aware that he might not be as invisible as he thought. He noticed Laura walking back toward the galley, her expression unreadable. And back in row 12, Malik finally pulled the note from his hoodie pocket. He looked at it, his fingers brushing the edge. He hesitated for a second, then slowly unfolded it. But just before he could read the words, the lights flickered. Then the pilot's voice echoed again through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've just been notified of a high-priority passenger on board, and we're adjusting our landing procedures accordingly. Please remain seated." Heads turned. Whispers filled the cabin. Malik froze. A high-priority passenger? He looked down at the note, then back up toward first class. And for the first time on that flight, a new kind of tension took over. Not fear, not confusion, but the feeling that something big, something no one saw coming, was about to unfold. And the seat theft? It was only the beginning.